Mike, thank you so much for this congregation, for having us today. It's a great honor. I can't even describe how much to be here. To be here in Wales, to be here with the special congregation that we know that much more unites us than separates us, and we've been learning that for the past few days. My name is Matan Dansker. With me today is my friend, partner, my leader in many ways, Naftali. And we're here today to bring you with us to a journey. We know that in here we meet people that all they have is love. Love for us, love for our people, love for what our civilization in Israel has to represent. And we know that we come from the same root, because it doesn't matter if you read the book of Paul or if you're reading Jeremiah, it all takes place in Jerusalem. And I think it's just wonderful to be here with you today. And it's a historic moment. Christians and Jews have a lot in common, a common root. They also have sometimes a complicated history, but I think the people who are here are making sure that although a complicated history, we look into the future and we can be optimistic, realizing our common God and the common role that we have in the world. Today, we'll be sending you to a journey, and we ask you, me and Naftali and I rather, are not politicians. All we are patriotic Israelis who feel and care deeply for the survival, the existence, and the flourishing of our nation, of the nation of the Jewish people that has a message, a universal message to the world entire. And we're here inviting you not to get a picture based on sound bites, based on media, but from the ground of Israelis who grew up, lived, fought, many times lost for the nation and for the ideal, for the Jewish revolution and Jewish national homeland, that has a message, a universal message, not only for Israelis, but for the world entire, because we hope that based on the stories that we'll be telling you tonight, we will realize what I know you already know, but we will make you stronger in your belief that essentially the battle for civilization taking place in the Middle East today is not only a battle for the survival of Israel, but a battle for the ideals that we all share together. So thank you for having us, and I hope it will be a good experience.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for coming here and honoring us with your attendance. It was really exciting to come here and speak to you over here, so far away from Israel. But though we are so far, we feel so close, and we were really welcomed into this community over here, the Jewish community in Liverpool. And we're going to have many speeches throughout the week. Thanks a lot to Mike, who has brought us here. We're going to be speaking in universities, in Leeds, in York. We're going to be speaking in some Jewish schools in high school in Liverpool and Manchester. And we're just going to bring out the truth, the story, our Israeli and Jewish story. And we're going to start off with a short movie clip describing what our story is based on, which is Operation Protective Edge. In summer 2014, as you know, 3 Israeli teens were kidnapped and killed right after, leading to Operation Protective Edge. Here are some pictures and some videos and some voices to remind us what happened that summer, and then we're going to present you with our stories.
Reserves. The city of Jerusalem came under rocket attack. It happened literally seconds ago.
I'm a lieutenant and I'm a deputy commander in an Iron Dome battery.
I'm a major in the engineering core unit. I command a special operation to find and blow up terrorist tunnels.
I'm a reserve paramedic in the special unit of the Nahal Brigade.
As a commander in the IDF, for me it's a privilege to protect my home, to protect my land, to protect the whole Jewish nation.
During Operation Protective Edge, I was the commander of the rescue company responsible to evacuate the wounded and the casualties during the war.
At 20 years old, my base is here in the Gaza Strip.
A short time ago, Israeli officials reported an attempt by militants to invade southern Israel by sea.
At the first day of Protected Edge, two scuba divers, the commander of the Hamas, came through the water and started to run towards our base. When something like that happens, you don't have time to think. Me and other officers ran to the fighting zone and we started exchange of fire. And actually, we killed them.
In the last 24 hours, we've had 130 rockets that have targeted our civilians.
Every time people ask me about Iron Dome, I like to emphasize that behind this system there is a man or a woman making sure the job is done. You have to react on time, you have to make the right decision. It's a matter of a few seconds. When you see a target on the screen, you can also see where it's potentially going to fall. So you know that each rocket that you're intercepting could hit a house, family, children.
What is fear? How do you deal with fear?
In this extreme situation, I want to believe that I made the right decision.
I heard someone back of me yelling, "Where's Hadar? Where's Hadar? Hadar is missing." And that's when I understood Hadar was kidnapped.
The moment I heard that my brother is the missing soldier, I right away wanted to go back and help my brother we're dealing with.
When we entered the tunnel, it was very dark. We barely saw anything, except for a trail of blood, so I knew exactly where I need to go. I told Lieutenant Shaked, "Wait here for 5 minutes. If I don't come back, I'm probably dead."
This is the longest 5 minutes of my life. I didn't ever watch.
I heard Shaked yelling to me, "We have to get out of the tunnel, we have to get out." Hadar was dead.
When I first understood that he is gone, I felt something is missing.
These tunnels were extremely dangerous and we have to stop it.
And the Hamas terrorists blow a huge ID under the specific place that Ori stand inside the tunnel.
Place became like hell. All the injured just screamed. My EMT, he got in shock. He couldn't move or speak. So I grabbed him and I told him, just understand, we might lose one, but we will save 5.
My family is very worried, especially because I was injured twice, and the second time was very hard for me.
In midnight, his father called me and said that we need to go to the hospital.
It's me, come to the hospital again.
When you see officers like Ori coming back, this is courage.
Courage comes from the inside. It comes from your soldiers. It comes from the mission. You don't need to look a lot to find courage. It's just there.
Okay, so we're gonna get yeah, you can just enlarge it. Right? Full screen, see if it works. Okay, great. So shalom again. I'll introduce myself. My name is Naftali Gross. I am 28 years old, currently married to Tria which means revival. And my first baby daughter, who was born 4 months ago, her name is Sion. Sion, she's our daughter who was born in Sion, born in Zion. We're very proud of her, and very proud and feel privileged to be living in the city of Jerusalem. My English is from the States, from Long Island, New York. That's where my parents grew up with their families, grandparents, cousins, brothers, sisters. But my parents always knew when they met, and they met at an Israel parade, a parade supporting Israel throughout the streets of Manhattan. That's where they met, and they made a decision that they're going to move to Israel with their children, because they understood there's no other place in the world to grow up your Jewish children than the Jewish country, the Jewish homeland, Israel. So when I was 6 months old, after crying a lot, my parents got on a plane and made Aliyah to Israel. And I always tell my parents, thank you so much for making that decision for me, that courageous decision just to leave everything behind, just like Abraham left everything behind. Leave your family, leave your loved ones, leave your language, your culture, and come to a new land where Judaism is flourishing. And thank you for making that decision for me and giving me such a blessed life. So I studied in schools in Jerusalem, high schools. I'll be telling you a bit later about a terrorist attack that occurred in my hospital, in my city in Jerusalem, my high school. And after high school, I started an army program. I'll be talking about it in a moment. And right after the army, I started studying in medical school in Jerusalem. So I'm currently in my 6th year of medical school in Hadassah Hospital. You've probably heard about it. Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. So this is my final year of training, next year internship, and then I have to decide what's in the future, what I want to specialize in. So it's really a privilege to be saving lives throughout Jerusalem. My father was a pediatrician, and he inspired me also to go volunteer in a very special organization you're probably all familiar with, Magen David Adom, the major ambulance service in Israel, reacting to all types of emergencies, being beside people in the most difficult times of their lives, whether it's them having a stroke or a heart attack, people who go through CPR, car accidents, and even sometimes delivering babies. That's what we've been doing in Jerusalem since I'm 15, so this is already 13 years that I really feel privileged to be aiding people, helping people, saving lives. There's other things we do in Magen David Adom too, which is, for example, you see there's a joint training with doctors from Switzerland. Unfortunately, Israel has a lot of experience with dealing with mass casualty scenes such as terrorist attacks. And doctors from Switzerland came to get the proper training from Israeli medics in Magen David Adom. This was a joint training, us teaching them about the priorities of treatment, of triage at scene, who to treat first, how to handle a scene like this. And this is knowledge that we share not only with doctors from Switzerland, but many Red Cross people a few months ago came from the Philippines and did shifts in Jerusalem and saw how fast and how efficient we react to many kinds of emergencies in Jerusalem. I give tours to groups from out of Israel. That's a group of Jewish students from Australia. I met with the Jewish Agency back in 2012. And we were dancing in the snow here that was falling down as we came because we really missed that enormous snowstorm we had in Jerusalem 4 or 5 years ago, where the city was actually paralyzed. We were on 4 and 4-wheel drive. It was chaos, but it was a real adventure, those days of snow in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, we have been treating more difficult scenes in Jerusalem. You'll hear more about it tonight. But as you know, Jerusalem is divided by west and east. It's a one united city. As President Trump has said not long ago, bringing the embassy to Jerusalem finally after 70 years since we've established our state. So it's a very complex city. But in Magen David Adom, it doesn't matter if we're in the cities of East Jerusalem treating Arabs, Palestinians, and Muslims, or we're in the old city treating Christians or Jews. Everyone is treated equally, and it's a great feeling to be out there saving human lives. That's what we do. But sometimes we also have to deal with terrorist attacks. The picture of those 8 young guys, those are the guys from my high school, a terrorist attack that occurred in 2008. The other pictures are pictures from terrorist attack in my neighborhood, 300 meters away from my home. I'll be speaking about it later on today. But Israelis know to be there when you have to be there, and to give the fastest and most efficient treatment in order to save human lives. I've been drafted to the paratroopers in 2009. These are my friends out there. The paratroopers is actually an infantry unit, just like Golani Brigade or Givati Brigade, but we do a lot of joint training with the Air Force if it's being transported with Black Hawks from place to place, and jumping from these airplanes, Herculeses, which is also a great adventure. I gotta say that the Psalms you've been saying over here, these are being said on every Hercules plane that takes off from the airport by soldiers, if they're religious or secular. Everyone are praying those Psalms together, singing together on the airplane before the jump. This is what a Jewish Israeli army looks like from within the airplane. Throughout my army service, I had a lot of experience. I've been seeing many borders. There's the border of Hebron on the upper right. Upper left is Gaza. A lot of joint training with the Armored Corps, so we work together in order to fight terror. That's a puppy I met up there in the borders up north, confronting Hezbollah, which is a great threat for Israel these days, together with Iran and Syria and the complicated situation over there. And I'm just going to give a short introduction before Matan gets up and tells us about his experience from Gaza, from Operation Protective Edge. In 2005, this was around 30 years after Israel established settlements in Gush Katif. That's what we called it, Gush Katif, which was within Gaza Strip. Many Jewish settlements were over there. The first Jewish settlements over there were actually coming actually from Sinai, when we signed the peace agreement with Egypt. Many people who were evacuated from their homes in Sinai those days came to Gush Katif to settle the land, and the Arab farmers looked at them and started laughing. I mean, you're a farmer. You think you're going to be able to grow anything out of this salty, sandy land? No way, no way you're going to be able to get any crops coming out of this land. But the Gush Katif farmers, Jewish farmers, had faith in God, and God had faith in them, and they created an empire of agriculture, bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars to Israel every year. Over 60% of the organic vegetable products in Israel were coming from Gush Katif, and it was an empire of agriculture. There were thousands of Palestinian workers working there every day, giving them the ability to make a nice salary, to bring back to their families and have a nice life. But after the 2000s and after the Oslo Agreement, slowly, these settlers were being attacked with mortar shells, missiles, shooting attacks, but they held strong. And then in 2005, Ariel Sharon, who was the head of, he was the prime minister of Israel from the Likud political party, decided to unilaterally disengage from Gaza. And the equation that he made, that were shattered into pieces after we left Gaza, the equation was, if the conflict and if the dispute is about the land, and if that's why the Palestinians are attacking us again and again and again, and these terrorist organizations will not give us a normal life, so if we give back land, we'll have peace. And that was shattered right after we left Gaza Strip. What we have to understand is that before the Gush was evacuated, the country was in chaos. There was tension. I was a young adult protesting. We went on these long marches, tried to enter Gush Katif, long live chains going from Gush Katif all the way to Jerusalem, really protesting. And that's the beauty of a democracy. Unlike other countries or democracies in the Middle East where you can't really protest, in Israel the protest was really strong, and we shouted and said this would be a terrible mistake. But a democracy has a democracy. The majority decides, and they pulled out over 8,500 settlers who really, with a strong faith, have been there for many, many difficult years and wanted to stay there, but they were pulled out. And it was cemeteries right? The dearest ones who even lost their lives in terrorist attacks in Gush Katif were moved from their cemetery to Jerusalem. And it was also the synagogues that the decision was, do not ruin the synagogues, because Jewish people never ruin synagogues. If there's not a new synagogue to be built on that ground, it's against our halacha, and we thought that they would respect holy places. But right after Israel left Gush Katif, these synagogues were burnt and demolished to a crisp by the terrorist organizations. Since 2005, that number is just going up and up. It's not 15,000 anymore. It's probably over 30,000 rockets were fired from Gaza territory. Just so you get an image of these rockets. These rockets aren't rockets just falling on Shderot or Kfar Aza like the pictures over here. These rockets are targeting all of Israel. And the reason for that is that Gaza Strip has a border with Egypt too. And if we look at this, and you can't really see the laser pointer well, but on the border with Egypt, next to Rafiach, there's a route called the Philadelphia route. And as long as Israel controlled that route, we had a certain amount of control over the underground tunnels smuggling in weapons and ammunition within Gaza. Once Israel exited Gaza, there was no control on that route anymore, and more tunnels, massive tunnels, were being digged underground, and large amounts of ammunition, rockets, rifles were being streamed into Gaza. Instead of turning Gaza into Singapore of the Middle East, they turned it into the nightmare of the Middle East. Rockets targeted all Israel. And Matan is going to be talking soon about the influence on the Israeli society. People running to shelters, little children wetting in bed. People cannot have a normal life, being terrorized by this organization, which is in government in Gaza. Just naturally, after Israel exited Gaza in 2005, 2006, Hamas was elected to government by the Palestinian people, and these are the ones controlling lives of around 1.8 million Palestinians today in Gaza. Who is Hamas? Hamas was declared as a terrorist organization by many countries such as the US, European Union, Canada, Japan, and many other countries. Hamas rejects all compromises and any negotiations with Israel, refusing. And the reason they refuse is to take a look at the charter, the charter of the Hamas that you could see here on the board. Where is it? Yep, here it is, right over here. The charter, you could Google it and find it. Many are saying, Israel has to compromise. Israel has to negotiate. Israel has to talk to Hamas. And if we look at the words of the charter here, where exactly could we compromise? What exactly could we, what kind of conversation could we have with this government in Gaza terrorizing their own citizens, writing here that there is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad, or Israel will exist until Islam will obliterate it. As long as this organization, who believes that Gaza is a Muslim land and all of Israel is a Muslim land and whoever is not Muslim is not allowed to live in the land of Israel, as long as they believe that, how exactly could we compromise with these people, with this organization? This is something the world does not understand. I'm going to hand over the mic to Matan, and I'll be back soon with my story. Matan.
Thank you, Naftali. I'll hit on from here, but before I go into, I'm sort of going to take you to a chronological continuation of where Naftali left off and go into my personal story, start a little bit of background about myself. The picture that you see on the screen before you is actually a picture of my homeland where I was born. My town, I was actually born in Jerusalem, but in the age of 2 already. We left a town called Efrat, which is 10 minutes from Jerusalem, a beautiful suburban areas in the mountains of Judah. Now, my parents, who grew up in the United States, decided from religious and national ideology to make aliyah, to immigrate to the state of Israel, and they created their house there. Now, Efrat is written already in scripture as the place that Jacob buries basically Rachel as he's walking to Bethlehem. It says, "Vayikbereh Sham b'derech Ephrata hi Bethlehem." I shall bury her on Efrat on the way to Bethlehem. And I grew up a beautiful childhood, loved to walk in the fields, loved to look at the views, enjoyed spring, the smell of the fruit, suburban town with, similar to the beautiful areas that we're seeing here, congregations, people mostly religiously oriented. And it was a wonderful life, very patriotic area, a place that thinks deeply about the future of the State of Israel, educates its young men and women to give and give and give out of the concept and understanding that when you give, you actually also receive something in life. And that's basically a strong part of my education. And of course, technology is not my thing. Wonderful. I'm doing good up until now. Yeah. I'm just testing you. I know what to do. Yes, okay, so here we are. I'm a soldier, 19 years old. Before I tell you where I was during my military service, I want to go back a little bit and continue from where Naftali ended. Basically, we're talking after the disengagement, the Gaza Strip, the southern border of Israel, becomes a chaotic area. Our southern border is being bombarded day after day, night after night. The Israeli public is starting to ask themselves serious questions about what we want to do about this enormous challenges of a terrorist group dedicated for our annihilation sitting on our southern border. The Israeli public, anybody who knows its DNA, who knows its basic genetics, knows that the biggest fear of the public, the most personal nerve, the place that hurts us the most, is the issue of war. We're a life-loving people. The national movement called Zionism was not a national movement that dreamed of coming to Israel and going to war. On the contrary, it was a dream of thousands of years of the notion of redemption, of returning to your homeland, of plowing fields, of living beautiful lives in the most natural place that a Jew has to live, a Hebrew person in the Hebrew land. That was what the concept was about. But unfortunately, from the first day, from the redemption, from the first dawn of Zionism, I'm talking 100 years ago, Israel had to struggle and fight wars with an enemy dedicated for its destruction. But the Israeli public still try to avoid war because that's what happens when you live in a society that every mother feels like she's the mother of all the soldiers, that every father feels like every son serving the nation is serving him. That's what happens when you're in a mandatory draft and every man, woman capable goes to the army and knows that he can give his life. It is a constant fear, but it's a fear mixed with a pride and the notion that sometimes, when push comes to shove, a country decides to go to war. In 2012, the Israeli government brings up basically a new concept. At this point, out of the fear of war, Israel says, at this point, we want to bite our lips. We say that we're going to give a chance to the other side. We're going to warn them. If this continues, then you will see the strength and the spirit of the Zionist movement. That meaning that a Jewish child who is under attack, the concept of the State of Israel means that we will defend them no matter how hard the price will be. But at that point, because we are a life-loving nation, at that point, we also fear for the lives of the enemy and its children. As we all say in Passover, when the Egyptians are getting drowned in the Red Sea, and God sees that the people of Israel are rejoicing, he says, what are you doing? My foundation, my creation is drowning and you're rejoicing? We are taught to have compassion also for the enemy and also for its children. So we warn and warn and warn. And the decision is made in 2012 in which we go to Operation Pillar of Defense. Now, anybody who knows the consequences of war and the strategies of battle realizes that essentially, in order to attack as many terrorist compounds as we can, it would have been a smarter idea to have boots on the ground, essentially bring in infantry soldiers. But out of the fear of the lives of Israeli soldiers and out of the fear of the life of civilians on the other side, Israel decides to take a pinpoint operation and basically only use the Air Force to attack as many Hamas areas as possible to try, maybe bring the enemy to understand that enough is enough. Give up this life of fear and terrorizing others. Focus the funds that you receive from the international community on building your communities, on building homes, and not building bombs to terrorize others. So the 2012 operation, I see that you'll be the manager of it. You can go forward. The 2012 operation ends, and there was a certain, I would say, short period that there was quiet in Israel. But unfortunately, that didn't last for long. In 2014, 3 young Israeli teenagers decide that they want to go home to their mother and father. They want to go spend Shabbat with their parents, and they want to leave their high school. They study in a yeshiva in Gush Etzion. Now, I told you that I grew up in Efrat, which is the capital of Gush Etzion, meaning that they study in a high school 10 minutes from the house where my parents lived. Today, I live in Jerusalem. Then, when I was in the military service, I was still living in Efrat. I then was a senior squad commander in the Golani Brigade. It's similar to the paratroopers, just much better. And essentially, I was in charge of training my soldiers. We were on the Hermon Mountain, preparing, sitting on the Syrian border. The Hermon Mountain, which is what's called the eyes of the state of Israel, is basically the area of the triangle of the borders of Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. We are there protecting the eyes, protecting the northern border of Israel. While at home, these 3 teenagers, young, innocent 3 teenagers, they go in a vehicle. Because in Israel, I am my brother's keeper. Each person tries to help the other. And they're thinking that they're hitchhiking to get a ride home. People who were disguised as Jews stop the vehicle. They enter the car. And unfortunately, it turned out that it was a couple of Hamas kidnappers who kidnapped the boys and began driving them to Palestinian villages in Judea and Samaria. Now, I'm in the Hermon Mountain. I cannot describe to you in words the pain that I felt. My homeland, the beautiful trees, the beautiful area that all I like to do is sit, reflect, pray to my God, think of my family, think of life. That place becomes such an evil place where 3 innocent children, that all they wanted to do is go home for a Shabbat, get in a vehicle, and they're terrorized. I felt the frustration of a soldier. How could this happen? How can Jewish blood just be being spilled that way and I have nothing to do about it? So Israel decides to go into an operation. The Israeli public is in hysteria. Like I told you, that each parent in Israel feels he's the father of everybody. So that's what was happening in Israel during those days. Demonstrations, secular, religious, right-wing, left-wing, including minorities. The Druze minority, who were proud that they serve our nation. People who, nations of the world together demonstrating for love with one universal prayer, which is the same prayer that the angel told Abraham as he took Isaac to Mount Moriah. Do not harm the child. And that prayer continued. And as the military basically goes house into house, neighborhood into neighborhood, praying, hoping to find the boys alive. Unfortunately, I'm sitting in the Hermon Mountain, and I get a message. We were getting the message during intelligence reports and also on our cell phones. The 3 teenagers' bodies were found. Where does this evilness grow? Where you're raised to believe that all human beings breathe, think, want the same things that you want. But the realities of the Middle East make you understand, even as a young 21-year-old soldier, make you understand that there are just some people in this world whose civilization, whose rationale, and I'm not talking about a certain religion, I'm talking about a certain way of thinking, is totally opposite to what I felt in Efrat and what you feel here in Wales. Israel, basically, during Operation Brother's Keeper, is starting to receive many missiles from the Gaza Strip because Hamas realizes that we're attacking its headquarters in Judea and Samaria, so it decides to continue and shell missiles on the Israeli public. Days go by, and there is a realization that after 2005, where we gave them a chance, you said territory for peace, here, take it. All we got is terror. After 2012, where we said to them, please don't make us hurt you. You're hurting us, and we have more mercy than you have towards your civilians. After 2012, after the biting of the lips, enough is enough. I get an order, together with my soldiers, prepare your gear. Israel has decided to retaliate. The operation is called Protective Edge, which is also a quote from Scripture. And the notion is that we are going to go into the Gaza Strip with boots on the ground this time, into the battlefield, doing the most proud, moral, but fearful and hardest thing imaginable, go into the battlefield to protect our families. Now, if you'll see the map now of the Gaza Strip, what you will see is basically inside the Gaza Strip, there were terrorist tunnels. Now, these tunnels, imagine it, on the border between Liverpool and Wales, if, let's say, the sea wasn't separating it. On that border, you have basically tunnels that their aim is to come in, God forbid, from the area of the UK into Wales with one goal only, to kill as many Walesians as possible. That's the Gaza Strip. I know, it's funny when you, in the UK, it's a crazy idea. Unfortunately, these are the realities in the south of Israel. The Gaza Strip, full with terrorist tunnels, preparing to go into the kibbutzim, Nir'am, Erez, Netiva Asara, Ena Shlosha, Sufa. I understood these are from Kfar Aza, the pictures that are here, also preparing to go through tunnels and kill as many Israelis as possible. The Israeli army decides we're going to send boots on the ground, we're going to enter the Gaza Strip with an attempt of destroying these terrorist tunnels. Look at how close those tunnels are. So I'm preparing with my soldiers, and I'm standing on the Gaza border. My commander comes to me and he tells me, speak with your soldier, Dansker. That's how we talk with each other in the army with family names. And I realize that now I need to give the speech of my lifetime. I'm no Winston Churchill. I'm not going to start the bloodshed and tears and the big speeches of World War II. I'm a 21-year-old, given a task to explain my 19 and 22-year-old soldiers to go against their most basic instinct in life, which is to survive, to come to innocent children and tell them, look, we did not return after 2,000 years to this homeland to go to war. On the contrary, we came to live life, but our life is in danger. Our liberty, our freedom is in danger. And throughout history, if there is a war worth fighting, it is only wars that have to do with the protection of the most basic elements that we want our universe to be. A universe of love, a universe of peace, a universe that brothers sit together and rejoice as Scripture teaches us. And I explained that to them, but I see the fears in their eyes, the same fear that I had. I loved life. Suddenly, I begin reflecting the danger that I'm going to be going into, the fear, the notion that, God forbid, I can lose my life. I began in that moment to vision my family. All I wanted to do, it was a Friday afternoon. All I wanted to do was be with my mother and father in a Shabbat dinner. All I wanted to do. And as I'm speaking, I noticed something quite peculiar during my speech. I noticed that one of my soldiers, his name is Ben Vanunu, as I'm speaking, in the moment that I need him to be the most focused, I noticed that he's obsessed with looking backwards. He's obsessed with not looking towards me, where I'm with my back facing Gaza, but he's looking back towards Israel. And I said, "In Ben Tieti, be with me. Why aren't you listening to me?" And he's still obsessed. And I couldn't understand. War in the books, in the great Greek novels such as Iliad and Odyssey, is always presented as glory. But war is far from glory. It is the ugliest thing, it is the biggest sin before God that could be in this world. A few hours after we entered the Gaza Strip, I heard a weird sound of something blowing up. We were entered and straight met with Molotov cocktails, missiles, bullets from every side. And I'm inside a vehicle, and I hear something, a huge sound. Now, I'm the commander of my vehicle, so I have a camera. I see something burning at that point. It's 2 a.m, but I don't really know what that is. Only a few hours later, I hear that blow-up was the vehicle very close to me. And that unfortunately 7 of my friends were instantly killed by an RPG, including Ben Vanunu, my soldier. Here you can see him there. Ben Vanunu, an 18-year-old, beautiful, innocent child, together with the rest of my friends there. So I had to reflect on that moment. Try to think of the last time I saw Ben. Why was he so obsessed in looking back? Why wasn't he looking at me? And then I realized something. Remember the map of Gaza I showed you right before? There's a city there. If you see, there's the city of Ashkelon and the city of Ashdod. That's where Ben Vanunu comes from. So when I'm standing on the Gaza border and he's looking backwards towards the building, he's seeing the place where his parents are sitting in that very moment inside bomb shelters. That's what's at stake for him. That's what's at stake. This is not a war going thousands of miles out of the country for other countries' interests. It's the most basic battle a man can struggle in his life to protect his family, to protect his community, to protect his mother and father. The terrorists are in front of him. His mother and father, literally, not as a metaphor, are in back of him in that city. And he, Ben Vanunu, a 19-year-old with a beautiful smile, stands between them. I thought the tragedies of war end there. And after a couple weeks of fighting in which we took every precaution possible to protect as many civilian lives, both on our side and in the other side, going into hospitals where the enemy hides bombs, into buildings civilian populated that we endangered ourselves to not hurt civilians, although there were weapons inside civilian populated areas. I thought the tragedies were over. But then I got another message. A Job message, as we say. There's an old Israeli poem called Shnenu Me'oto Akfar. We are both from the same village. Now, I don't want you to get Naphtali and mine's message wrong. Life in Israel is beautiful. The culture is amazing. The language is wonderful. The smells are magnificent. You've been there, many of you, I know. The feeling of being part of something great, the feeling of community, even the sarcasm and humor is something that I love and cherish. So this old Israeli poem speaks of 2 children that grow up in the same village. That was like Yuval and I, who you can see in the picture. Yuval was my best friend, as the young people say, the bestie. We did everything together, spoke about everything together. I knew he wouldn't judge me when I told him my secrets. He would tell me his. Some people would call us the Jonathan and David, although modesty prevents me from saying if that's true or not. When he had a girlfriend, he had to explain to her, look, you're not going to be alone with me. Matan will always come. The best friends in the world. Kindergarten together, junior high together, counselors together, everything together. Went to the military together. He went to the paratroopers. I went to Golani. This is a picture we took where we ended commander's course. I became a squad commander. He became a commander of new recruits as well. And I'm leaving Gaza. My soldiers are standing after 9 days of fearless battle. And I want to speak to them, try to comfort them, explain to them what our missions will be. When an officer and a friend come up to me and they say to me, Dansker, we need to speak to you. Matan, we need to speak to you. Have you heard of the incident next to Kibbutz Nir'am, they say? Kibbutz in the south of Israel. I said, no. What's the ramification of that? Why do I need to know? He said, look, there were 12 terrorists disguised as Israeli soldiers who entered through a tunnel in Kibbutz Nir'am with an aim to get to the city of Sderot and Kibbutz Nir'am and kill as many people as they can. There was a general and a couple of his soldiers who blocked them in a courageous battle with and giving their life. I said, why are you telling me this? There's so many soldiers killed at this point. What's so significant about this? They look at me and they say, we didn't want to tell you inside because we were scared of your reaction. Matan, the general's name was Dolev Keidal, and the soldier who was with him was Yuval. The whole world started becoming black at that moment. I felt like my body was like a glass pitcher breaking glass after glass. The Greeks described that feeling as the catharsis, the collapse of all your soul, the revolution of everything you believe to be true. I felt like my childhood was taken from me at that moment. My best friend in the world. I always, as a patriotic Israeli, would read the glories of Zionism and the battles that Israelis did on the fight for freedom. But I was never told that a best friend can be killed as well. It was a chaotic moment, a moment that still goes with me till today. It was a realization that I had to go and search, struggle for my patriotism, struggle to continue to believe for Israel, struggle to find God. A moment of such collapse, of such chaos, that I went and I searched, and I realized that ultimately we can be as cynical as we want in this world, but ultimately there is no way to avoid the truth. Yuval fell on the altar of freedom. He fell on the battle for civilization as we know it, on the notion that God is good and loves and doesn't hate, on the notion that we did not return to Israel to die, we returned to Israel to live, and sometimes, unfortunately, even for the continuation of existence of our society, even on the struggle of life, sometimes have to die. It doesn't comfort the broken heart, but it makes you continue and believe. And I enjoy, as I said, everyday life in Israel. And I want sometimes when you hear the bad-mouthers of the world, those who would perceive to paint Yuval and my friends who were killed as people who are enemies of peace, as people who are more to blame for war in the region and in the world than the others who provoked the war, I want you to think of Yuval, a child who all his life volunteered with Down syndrome kids, who gave and gave and gave and never asked anything in return with a beautiful smile. I want you to think about that because I know that his struggle and his battle was a universal one. And that's why I don't only speak in Jerusalem, but I also speak in Wales. It's because I realize our common goals together. And I'll end with this and tell you that I really know that here sit friends, because if there's one thing I do is I try to read my history. Sometimes my Bible, so my mother will be proud. But my history as well. And I know that actually Christian Zionism, as a political movement in the UK and in Wales, was there before Jewish Zionism even existed. In Herzl's first Zionist conference that was in Basel in Switzerland, there were Christian Zionist organizations there. And people like you, who will get larger and larger, I've met them in the United States and I'm meeting them here, will bring out the message, the important message, that what happens in Jerusalem, which is the foundation of our civilization, affects everybody because it is the root, our common root. And I really want to give you my gratitude and appreciation for allowing me to give you my story. Thank you.
Merci.